Good afternoon, Bermuda, and welcome to the members of the media here today. I'm honored to sit here again this week following last week's general election. I'm joined in our weekly COVID update by the Minister of Health, the Honorable Kim Wilson, who will provide an update from her ministry. Following her update, I will touch on a few matters before we take questions from members of the media. Minister Wilson?
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon. Today, the Ministry of Health received 347 tests, and none were positive for COVID-19. Bermuda now has 181 total confirmed positive cases, and their status is as follows. 170 have recovered, and there are only 2 active cases who are all under public health monitoring. None are hospitalized or in critical care, and the total deceased remains at 9. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 56, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 9 to 101 years. Overall, 51% of cases of COVID-19 positive were black, 42 are white, and 7% are other or unknown. The source of all local cases is as follows. 70 are imported, 90 are local transmission with a known contact, 21 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and none are under investigation. Bermuda's country status remains at sporadic cases, and the 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is less than 1. At last week's press conference, I responded to a media question regarding how we can safely partake in Halloween festivities this year. Today, I wish to elaborate further on my response and to advise that local guidance has been created based on the CDC's recommendations and has been posted to the government's social media accounts. It places various Halloween activities into 3 risk groups, either high risk, medium risk, or low risk, and I will share them with you now. Some examples of low risk activities which you can do safely this year include carving or decorating pumpkins with members of your household, decorating your house, a virtual Halloween costume contest, a Halloween movie night with people that you live with, and a trick-or-treat hunt with your household members in or around your own home. Meantime, moderate risk activities that you should do only if you can do them safely are as follows. One-way trick-or-treating, where individually wrapped goodie bags are lined up for families to grab and go, such as at the end of the driveway. And note that you, of course, should wash your hands before preparing the goodie bags. A small outdoor costume parade where people are distanced more than 6 feet apart. A costume party held outdoors where masks are used, and I don't mean the costume mask, and people can remain more than 6 feet apart. Visiting pumpkin patches where the use of hand sanitizer, mask wearing, and physical distancing is enforced, and having an outdoor Halloween movie night with local family friends with people spaced at least 6 feet apart. And finally, high-risk activities that you should definitely not do this year, and those are as follows. Traditional trick-or-treating, where treats are handed to children who go door to door, crowded costume parties held indoors, going to an indoor haunted house where people may be crowded together and shouting and screaming, and any activity congregating densely where people who are not, with people, who are not in your own household. Now, it certainly brings me no joy to discourage our usual Halloween activities this year. I know Halloween is a time which many of our children look forward to, and it is a big part of that tradition is, of course, the trick-or-treating. But I ask you to imagine the contact tracing hurdles that would arise if just one industrious trick-or-treater was COVID-19 positive. It's just not worth the risk. This pandemic has certainly not been easy on us, particularly least of which are children. Birthday parties have been put on hold, celebrations canceled, trips postponed. Everyone is suddenly now wearing a mask, and it can be a confusing time for our children. But we must continue to follow the guidance. I know it is tempting, and trust me, I feel like the biggest buzzkill sitting here right now, and week after week having to remind people about the importance of physical distancing and mask wearing. But our numbers are low because we have been so good at following the government advice to this point. We need to keep going. As I've said before, this is not forever. Please, Bermuda, just hang in for a while longer. As winter approaches and countries are seeing their second wave begin, we cannot afford to let our guard down now. Before I conclude this evening, I want to issue a reminder to travelers. Both visitors and residents must apply for the Bermuda COVID-19 travel authorization when traveling to Bermuda. The travel authorizations can be booked 1 to 3 days before departure, and they must be pre-vetted. Please do not wait until the day of travel to try to book your travel authorization. Travel authorization applications are vetted daily between the hours of 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. daily. For more information, call the COVID hotline at 444-2498. Also, finally, a note to employers. Thank you to the majority of you who are following the return to work guidance as best as possible. I understand that the reconfiguring of office spaces and schedules has not been easy. I also know that many of you want to go back to the normal pre-COVID-19 times, and that while you are instituting safe practices at work, such as mask wearing and physical distancing, please bear in mind that if your employees can work from home or on a rotational schedule, that is still the preferable situation. Remember, a close contact in the office space would be someone within 6 feet of someone while also wearing a mask for more than 15 minutes. Consider what would happen if one of your team members is a close contact of a positive person and your entire team must quarantine, effectively meaning that you lose your whole work staff. Stay safe, Bermuda, and remember, I wear a mask to protect you, and you wear a mask to protect me. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Health. Looking back on the recently held general election, on behalf of the entire country, I wholeheartedly commend the Parliamentary Registrar, Ms. Tania Woolridge, for surpassing her office's usually high standards to meet unprecedented circumstances. While it may be tempting to focus on the results, the Registrar is truly an unsung heroine who quietly but masterfully goes about her duties and obligations to Bermudian voters to ensure elections are beyond reproach, accurate, and fair. I extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to her and to her entire team at the Parliamentary Registrar. I know how people in certain roles can be taken for granted, so I wish to note a few of the developments that were undertaken for the first time last week. First, of course, there was in the election the opportunity for advance poll, which was extended to all seniors, allowing a greater share of voters to exercise their constitutional rights without the worry of exposure to large crowds. Secondly, the registrar's returning officers availed themselves of testing in order to carry out this vital public service, and they had to be trained on COVID-19 protocols and new election rules. Third, in partnership with Vision Bermuda, the registrar successfully introduced tactile audio devices, machines that gave visually impaired voters privacy for the first time by allowing them to vote without someone watching them mark their ballots. I know that there are further accomplishments for which the registrar and her team deserve credit. Ms. Woolridge marshaled her staff, and they more than rose to the occasion. Accordingly, I applaud everyone involved in producing and managing what was a safe, fair, and very efficient election. When it comes to coronavirus-related matters that have a direct impact on Bermudians, there is an issue that has recently arisen where the state of New York recently included Bermuda on a list of countries from which arriving passengers would have to quarantine on arrival. It is well known that Bermuda boasts a testing regime that tests the most amount of persons per capita currently, and we are now, I think, 5th or 6th in the world in testing per capita, than most countries on the planet. And we have extremely stringent requirements to be able to enter Bermuda, so we certainly do not agree with the new designation which has been put inside of the state of New York, especially when we're only showing 2 active cases. Technically, the list is derived by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC list, which deems Bermuda a level 2 COVID risk, meaning the risk in Bermuda is moderate and new cases are decreasing or stable. To further apply context, the UK government's current advice about Bermuda is that Bermuda is exempt from the Foreign Commonwealth Development Advice against non-essential international travel, and this is based on the current assessment of risk. We are grateful for the reasonable position that the United Kingdom has adopted, and we are working to seek a modification of the CDC advice. Before they had us on level 3, now we're level 2, which is causing some issues with travel to New York, so we're looking to see if we can get that further modified to ensure that its guidance reflects the reality in Bermuda and even more tourists feel safe traveling and visiting our island. As a result of the issue when it comes to safety, I would like to provide you with 3 statistics that, in a snapshot, reveal the state of the tourism industry as we stand and where people consider it safe. First, as would be expected, health and safety is the second most popular reason tourists are coming to Bermuda. Beaches are still number 1. However, with not many people traveling due to COVID, it is logical that their primary consideration, of course, would be their health and safety. Second, and this is of local residents, in May, 50% of residents thought that welcoming air passengers would pose a considerable risk to Bermuda's health. Now that number is only 12%, which recognizes that Bermudians have recognized that we can open our airport safely and have our tourists travel to Bermuda safely with excellent controls. Finally, 97% of tourists who have come to Bermuda since the airport was reopened to regularly scheduled commercial traffic have felt it safe or completely safe during their trip. We've built on our COVID-19 protocols and testing regime by telling the world that we are open and we are providing a safe destination for persons to visit as long as they follow the rules. As a result of the consistent work that we have all done together, our tourism outlook for the fall is looking far more attractive than we anticipated a few months ago. And there will be a number of events that will be held in Bermuda. On the 24th of October, Bermuda will host the Rugby World 10 series. On the 25th of October, the Bermuda Gold Cup sailing event that was recently designated a match racing world championship event will begin. And on the 26th of October, the PGA Tour's Bermuda Championship will begin, and live spectators will be in attendance. This is the very first PGA Tour event to be contested in front of live spectators since the beginning of the pandemic. And yes, it is happening right here in beautiful and safe Bermuda. Most Bermudians are aware of the economic importance of our tourism sector, and given the wider impact when visitors hire taxis, dine out, visit attractions, rent vacation properties. And the difficult but steady recovery in that industry will positively affect business owners, employees, and entrepreneurs alike. And that is why it is vital for us to continue to minimize the risk of coronavirus transmission by following the advice from the Minister of Health. As unfun as it can be, no one wants us to see what is happening in other jurisdictions where things are being rolled back. Before I close, I would like to speak to some of the economic challenges that will be buffeting our island over the coming months and years. I have to say this before I close. Things will get worse in the Bermuda economy before they get better. And though we've been able to reopen our tourism industry to a small extent, though our international business industry is functioning well, there will be challenges inside of our economy. There are persons who are being laid off, and we do note that there are persons who are being made redundant. Our job as a newly elected government will be to take the best ideas and to work to accelerate our economic recovery. But the one thing that I want all of Bermuda to know is that there has never before been a time like now that we have to continue to unify ourselves, to look out for our neighbors, and to avail ourselves of the services that are being made available from the government of Bermuda. Before the election, I said that this government will not stand by while people go hungry. After the election, our pledge is still the same. However, the times will get tough, and it is important for us to remember that we are our brother's keeper, and we have to continue to remain unified through the challenges ahead. On Thursday, I will visit Government House to swear in a new cabinet, and the new government will certainly address you next week, as there are a number of economic matters that need to be spoken to for the public, so we can understand where we are, where we're going, and how everyone can pitch in to help. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions from members of the media.
Premier, we'll start with Tana.
Good evening. Premier, it appears that the general public is having little or no regards for the danger still posed by coronavirus. Is there a chance of a possible upsurge or spread of this disease? I guess the Minister of Health.
We've seen in other jurisdictions that there have been spikes, and they're going through second waves right now. However, those jurisdictions do not have the same level of mitigants, and where the community themselves are applying those mitigants. As I spoke about a few moments ago, we are at the position that we're in right now, which is tremendously great, simply because people are adhering largely to the public health guidelines. So I would suspect that if people continue to do so and continue to wear their masks, continue to physically distance, albeit it does create certain inconveniences such as trick-or-treating, but the reality is we are in a good space. In addition to the testing regime that we've established, the fact that we have all these mitigants, and the countries that we're seeing huge spikes, unfortunately, have not seen such community commitment insofar as application of the mitigants. So I believe that if we continue on the path that we've been on with respect to applying our public health guidance, then we're going to be in good position.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. On a separate note, I guess this one is for the Premier. Premier, there were some alarming reports stated in today's Daily on at least one school where teachers, students, and parents have to wait for an overall reform before some of the problems highlighted are rectified. Okay,
Been a little busy.
I leave that one for the Education Minister. I guess you've been on a little sabbatical, which is understandable.
Not really. I've had a full day of meetings over the last 2 days.
Okay, it's understandable. On the heels of the general election, we now hear of an enormous gap between teachers and the ministry. Teachers say that they are being demoralized. Is there likely to be a change at the ministerial level?
There will be no discussion about any type of appointments or disappointments which may be or may not be made for the cabinet before 2:30 p.m. When all members of the media will be invited to Government House when the new government is announced and sworn in.
And on a lighter note for the minister, I guess you have feeling this one coming. How do you feel that we got less numbers here in Bermuda than in a certain part of the United States, meaning the White House?
Yeah, the White House, exactly. Well, like we reported, there's 2 active cases, and again, that is a huge testament to the fact that the community has largely adhered to our public health guidance. The fact that Bermuda acted swiftly when we decided to make the decision with respect to closing our borders and doing the shelter in place. Because of the steps that we've taken and the mitigants applied, it's allowed us to open our borders now and to invite travelers to come to Bermuda and to enjoy what Bermuda has to offer. You would have heard a couple weeks ago about the accolades that we've received from world travel organizations with respect to being safe. The statistics that the Premier just revealed concerning safety being one of the main reasons that people are flocking to Bermuda, and I suspect that will continue. Again, it's simply because we have done quite aggressive testing and have applied public health guidance and are encouraging people to continue to adhere to that guidance. So we have to commend the public for that as well.
The only way for numbers to increase it anyway is through the airport. And if that doesn't change, do we still keep that high level?
Well, as you said, the numbers increase because of persons that are likely to bring it into Bermuda. However, we have recognizing that the greatest way of trying to reduce our numbers is by the protections and the mechanisms that we have at the airport, which is why if you are a non-resident, you are required to have a test, a PCR, a negative test upon arrival, and all persons that arrive in Bermuda must take a test upon arrival, and day 4 and so forth. So we do have a very, very aggressive testing regime. So in addition to us having one of the highest testing per capita in the world, our regime, I mean, we're seeing countries to the south copy us. And what do they say? Imitation is the best form of flattery.
Thank you much.
Roxanne?
Good evening, Mr. Premier. Just following up on the New York angle, you say you're working to see if a change can be made. Can you tell me what channels are being used to communicate?
I do know that the Cabinet Secretary had indicated that we were following up with the United Kingdom's office over in New York, I believe, as well. That's on a state level. I know there's also been other members of, I want to say, either federal or local government that have been contacted on that. As I said, it's previously we had an issue where the U.S. CDC had put us on level 3, and the state of New York was using the level 3 list for quarantine. So we were successfully moved to CDC level 2, of course, because CDC level 3 was causing an issue. Now the state of New York has said that their quarantine requirements don't just apply to level 3 jurisdictions, they now apply to level 2 jurisdictions. There aren't a whole lot of countries on the level 2. And so the question is, can we find ourselves moved to level 1, or can we find a way to work directly with the state of New York? It is something that, of course, is important, as we have flights that are going directly to New York. It is a major travel place, and the last thing of which we'd want is for persons to stop traveling on that leg. I mean, and it's interesting to note that where we have the situation with the United Kingdom, where the United Kingdom does not require persons who are leaving Bermuda to quarantine when they return to the United Kingdom. And we've seen that flight be incredibly busy and incredibly full. And we've seen a reversal of trends of which would normally see with the British Airways flight through the winter, that the British Airways flight is adding flights. So they're going from 3 times a week to 5 times a week due to the traffic that is on the routes and the fact that people know that they can get away on a vacation to a safe jurisdiction as long as they've done the requisite testing. So that's what we want to continue. I know that there's the work of which it's a far more difficult situation, certainly with Canada, because we know that we have the flight there, and that flight has been impacted due to the Canadian government's incredibly strict requirements that they don't actually let people into the country. And persons who are returning residents certainly do have to quarantine. We don't believe that's keeping in so far as our risk matrix, but those are the things of which we have to continue to attack, because tourism is important. Our airlift is important, the items of which it provides and the jobs of which it creates here on island. And we want to make sure that we can do the continued work to keep those air routes open and to make sure that persons can visit, so that the hotels that have open, we can make sure they remain open. As we know, some of them are operating at a loss, and it becomes a question as to whether or not their losses will be less if they are closed. So our work is certainly continuing there. And from the tourism aspect, we are determined to make sure that we can make a success out of this fall tourism season, whereas other countries will not be in a similar situation as we are.
You mentioned that a number of efforts are being made through both the UK government and on a state and federal level in the United States to as you say, get Bermuda moved to that level 1. Mm-hmm. That sounds like if you know anything about bureaucracy, quite a long process. Do you have a timing on when we might see a change?
I mean, I don't necessarily have a timing, and I can't speak to a long process. I know that the Minister of Health and successfully worked with the local U.S. Council here and also the U.K. To move Bermuda from level 3 to level 2. And I think that was done in a matter of a week or 2.
Yeah, we're taking all angles. Looking at all angles.
Yes, do you want to add to that?
Yes, Duncan, we're looking at all angles. Obviously, the connection that we have, Bermuda does as a member of CARFA, and we've been working with the Pan American Health Organization as well to see if they can assist their offices in D.C. to help to facilitate the correct information being provided to CDC so that the level of risk in Bermuda is reflective in the guidance that they're issuing to their United States citizens. So we're addressing it from all angles.
You're saying that getting it from 3 to 2 took a very short time. Are you at all confident that the move to 1 can be achieved in the same way?
Well, we're working on it. We're utilizing the same resources that we've done previously to get the error corrected previously. So we're still working on it and utilizing all resources available to us so that we can have, again, a proper representation of what the position is on the ground.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is it?
It is.
All right, excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. At home there in Bermuda, it's a pleasure to address you again as your premier, and we will be back here next week, Tuesday, to give another update on the latest happenings with the coronavirus. So with that, thank you, Bermuda, and good evening.